Well, good morning, everybody, or good afternoon if you're one of our Easterners on here. Welcome to the September 17th edition of On Track Live. I appreciate everybody taking the time to join us here live today for our special guest, Dave Cox. Appreciate everybody's attention. Encourage everybody to mute your mics while during the presentation and while you're not speaking. Real quick, little shameless self-promotion. The NCTA fall meeting is coming up right around the corner now. That meeting is going to be held at the Talking Stick Resort in Scottsdale, Arizona. Golf on Monday the 13th and meeting sessions on the 14th and 15th. Plenty of opportunity for networking at this event. It's an excellent venue. If you haven't been to Talking Stick before, it's a wonderful resort with a lot of amenities, but it's also real close to everything else that Scottsdale has to offer. So looking forward to seeing everybody there. We urge you to make your reservations as soon as possible. If you haven't made your hotel reservations yet, you should probably do that this week. Our discount rate expires on Friday. So make sure you get in there this week to get your hotel reservations, and then while you're at it, please go ahead and complete your registrations for the conference. If you have any questions, let Melinda or me know. It's going to be a lot of discussion, a lot of interesting discussion at this session. We have, of course, a lot going on in the coal regulatory world, and the topic of today's webinar will be some information also about that, about all these coal plants that are having their retirement dates delayed or done away with in a few cases. So we'll be talking about how that's having an impact on coal markets. You may also, unless you live on a rock, have heard about the proposed UP Norfolk Southern acquisition. We'll have several speakers diving into what that means and what we can expect from the regulatory approval process that we'll be embarking here shortly. So it'll be a robust program. We hope to see everybody in Scottsdale next month. But not to keep you all waiting for the topic of the day. Dave Cox is founder and CEO of Firmographs, which is a data services company that's been doing a lot of great work in the they work in a bunch of different sectors, but they've been doing a lot of work around coal and coal ash and some of the adjacent markets. And David has been tracking the various power plants that have been announcing coal plant delays, and we're very happy that he's taken the time out of his schedule to come and give us a presentation today on what he knows is out there and what he's done. So Dave, welcome. Appreciate you taking the time. I'm just going to kick it over to you now to do the presentation. We'll have a little bit of time at the end for some discussion. I've got the chat box open. If you'd like to type questions into the chat box, I'll send them, or you can wait for the end here and raise the handy thingy or unmute yourself or whatever. We'll have a little discussion at the end. So David, I'll kick it over to you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate everyone's time and participation today. Everything we did, John, before the meeting to get it all squared away, it's just kind of changed on my screen. So I'm going to have to take a minute to make sure I'm sharing the right thing again. Okay, I think we're there. Does that work for everybody?
Yep, looks good, Dave.
Okay, excellent. Well, in about the next 25 minutes or so, I'm going to cover two items. The main point of today's presentation is to review changes in the coal power market that may impact rail transportation. And this is in two categories. First of all, looking at coal plant closure delays having to do with the transport of new coal to plants. And we're also going to be looking at what John refers to as used coal sometimes, or coal ash and the beneficiation and reverse logistics that could be happening as a result of coal ash beneficiation for the concrete and cement sectors. And then at the end of this, I'm going to provide a little bonus and just show the group how we're using AI small language models for the coal industry and coal power and coal ash industry. So you could see a little bit about how we've been applying AI to help generate some of the data that I'm going to be sharing today. And just to confirm, are the slides changing okay?
Yep, we're following them.
Okay. There was some kind of automation going on there, so I just changed modes a little bit. So just a little bit about our business. So Firmographs is a niche US market analysis company. I started this business about 8 years ago. We focus on US energy and infrastructure, and we primarily work for companies that serve utilities of all sorts here in the US. So engineering, construction, construction technology, and materials companies. We spend a lot of our lives sourcing and aggregating data. All of our data comes from public sources. We have well over 1,000 data tables, tens of thousands of data fields, millions of records, and everything is traced back to the original source. I come from a civil and environmental engineering background, and we're always big on chain of custody for information, and we have a very good chain of custody on our data. So that's probably enough about us for the moment, and I'll get into part one, which I mentioned is about coal plant extensions. Now, we track coal plant extensions using a combination of resources. We're constantly looking at the publication of new integrated resource plans. Probably most of you are familiar with what those are, but these are the strategic planning documents where utilities talk about the different planning scenarios that they have to meet customer and reliability demands with different energy mixes. And those IRPs talk about coal plant extensions and retirements. We look at industry news, press releases. We often get filings from regulatory agencies and so on. Our operating data, which is also involved here because we're estimating quantities, comes from the EIA, and primarily the EIA 860 and 923 data sets. And this is an upgraded chart from when this information was shared at the last NCTA meeting. But since January 2025, there have been just over 20, you could argue 20, 21, 22 coal plants that have delayed or extended their retirement dates. There are also some plants that have accelerated their retirement dates. So it's not all good news from a coal plant perspective, but there certainly have been many more extensions than accelerated retirements. And you can see these plant by plant here. The beginning of the arrow is the original date. The end of the arrow is the new date with the extension. Just to look at one example here, Evergy had extended the Lawrence Energy Center from 2023 into the 2030s. Okay. This is the information we provided several months ago, and I'm calling this the rough cut information. So at that point, we just looked at all the boiler extensions, and based on a 2024 start date, estimated the total impact on additional net generation that's coal-based and also coal to be delivered to these boilers that were going to be operated for longer. And about 5 months ago now, we had estimated around 37 million short tons per year. We've done some additional analysis to dial this in a little more. So for this audience, we recognize that it's rail transportation that matters. So to honor that, we looked at the sites that have substantial rail and those that don't. Some of the more, near mine mouth type sites, or just sites with close trucking access to material, they're not really going to impact this industry, at least not that we could see. So of the 21 coal plants, 13 have substantial rail and 8 do not appear to have substantial rail. Now, of the 13, 10 have extended dates, an average of 4 years out, and 3 have accelerated dates. So with the date extensions, we expect that that's going to be an average of 4 years and 20 million short tons per year of coal. And by the way, after this meeting, I'm happy to follow up with people that have questions about individual plants, and we could show you more detail. I just have a limited amount of detail that we could get into in this format. If you look at the impact, that's the 20 million tons per year is about 7.5% of coal-based transportation in our calculation that we think is going to be extended. So I'm actually interested in audience feedback. I don't work in the transportation market like you all do, so I'm interested to see if you think that this number of about 7.5% of transportation being extended is a realistic number. I'll also be interested, John and others, to hear later what sort of economic impact that would have with respect to transportation pricing. The next part of the presentation here is to talk about coal ash beneficiation and the reverse logistics of taking material out of coal ash ponds and landfills and taking it to a new market. Oh, and there's a question. Emily Regis asked what's meant by substantial rail. The EIA talks about primary mode of transport, and we first looked at that. So if the primary mode of transport to the site is rail, that's substantial. And then we also looked at secondary modes. We did a good amount of AI research to look at individual power plants and see if there's rail unloading at the site. And if we either got a hit on substantial rail from the EIA data or through the AI, then we considered that to be substantial. We have a spreadsheet with every one of the sites listed, and there's a rationale in it, and I'd be happy to review that with people one-on-one. So just a few definitions when it comes to the coal ash beneficiation part of this. So a CCR site is a power plant, could be operating, could be not operating, where there's one or more CCR units, a coal combustion residual unit, as defined under the original EPA regulation. These units are landfills and impoundments containing sometimes millions of yards of mixed coal combustion products and sometimes water. So the closure approaches are important. You'll hear me talking about that. If the material is being closed in place, so maybe it's an existing landfill and the utility got permission to cap it and close it in place, then it doesn't offer probably much of an opportunity for the rail industry. On the other hand, if there's closure by removal, or you could call it a clean closure, then there might be an opportunity for reverse rail logistics. And looking at the whole market, we track this data at a very granular level of detail. So there are 303 active CCR sites. Again, those are current or former power plants. A few off-site landfills, but mostly the plants themselves. In those sites, we track more than 750 individual landfills and impoundments, and we're keeping track of the regulatory and operational life cycle of every one of those units. There's a total of about 3 billion tons of mixed materials in those 760 units, and it covers an area of 47,000 acres. So it's a substantial amount of material. And if you break that down further and focus on the closure by removal units, there are 281 of those landfills and impoundments slated to be closed by removal, with about 180 million tons of volume. Now you'll notice that 180 million out of 3 billion is not a very high percentage. There's a few reasons for that. First of all, the utilities try pretty hard to not close by removal if there's millions and millions of tons of material, because it's exceptionally expensive to do that. So it tends to be some of the smaller units where closure by removal is favored. It depends a lot on the regulatory environment and whether those locations are going to be allowed to close in place or closure by removal is required. But of the 281, 134 are closed, no longer that interesting to this audience. 115 have closure in process, meaning that there's material that's being moved. It may be moved to another on-site landfill or other on-site disposition. Some of it is being moved off-site and beneficiated by the ash marketing companies that do that work. So the details really matter, because you could see that we're going from billions of tons to a smaller number, and focusing in on those units that may be closing by removal, and then furthermore closing off-site. With off-site removal, that's more important. I think I'm going to go ahead and just skip this slide for now. We're tracking the beneficiation the location of beneficiation projects across the country. These are sites where material is being removed, and in most cases, it's being taken off-site and put to use. For example, either as a cement kiln feed or going straight into ready-mix cement plants, ready-mix concrete plants. Here's one example of the many individual projects that we're tracking. And you can see here that this particular project is running for 20 years. So when companies get involved with these projects, they can last quite a while. It's also an important reason that the industry associations are trying to get some regulatory flexibility on how these sites close, so that that material can be taken and put to good use. So that's what I meant to cover today. We have a lot of data and numbers, and I'm interested to put some of this information to use with the people on the phone here, because you know the transportation business, and we have a really good handle on both the fresh coal that's being brought to plants, and call it the used coal that's being taken out of plants and being put to good use. So I'll pause there, John, and then based on where we are with Q&A, I'd like to spend a couple of minutes on the bonus topic, which is looking at some of the coal industry AI that we have configured.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, a couple of questions, David, on the data. I know that you've made your tonnage. You've got a universe of coal plants that now have announced delays, and then you made those tonnage estimates based on those plants 2024
Yes.
usage. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so assuming that those plants stay open and continue to operate at the time they were closed, would give you that number. But many of those plants, I suspect, were probably operating at lower capacity factors in 2024, and with the blow up in electricity demand from data centers and AI and all the other good stuff that's going on, those plants in their extended years could be operating at higher capacity factors. So should we view these tonnage numbers that you put here as maybe a floor, and would your data sets allow running a range of options that might assume higher capacity factors?
Yes. So I'd say yes to both points. I think that based on the support that coal operations are getting, and the relaxation of some of the regulatory regime, I think that those numbers are very conservative, and that it could be greater. And when you get down to the individual plant level, I'd say that there's more modeling that could be done. And yes, with all the data modeled in the business intelligence dashboards that we have set up, it's definitely possible to do some what if scenarios without much trouble.
Awesome. Emily posed a question related to the merger, which may or may not be in your bailiwick, Dave, but I'll just throw it out there with the proposed UPNS transcontinental merger and projected increase in coal transportation volumes. Should shippers expect any benefits like better rates or better service from the rail carriers?
So I'd say that question is outside of my purview, but there is a certain amount of modeling that could be done just by looking at what network is used to get material from. We know what mines are feeding what plants, and working with someone that's very intelligent on rail transportation, like the people on this call, I think we could do some what ifs. I just wouldn't be able to do it by myself, but
I guess,
yeah, we could be part of that.
would your data set allow, I think, you know, as we're, and, you know, these merger regulatory proceedings are going to stretch probably all of next year. You know, so there's going to be ample time to be talking both inside the regulatory sphere and also with the railroads directly. Would your data set be able to quickly, since you have the plant locations and the source locations, would your data set be able to quickly spit out what percentage of the coal movements are on one railroad and what coal movements are going to need to use multiple railroads?
Not quickly, but it's definitely possible. And when I say possible, again, if we were working with someone that's expert in rail logistics and adding some of that data to our data set, it's the kind of thing we could do over a period of weeks. I believe, not months or years.
Interesting. That will probably be, you know, a key factor with, you know, how the coal sector ends up engaging in the discussion over the regulatory approvals for the merger, and see where we go from there. Thanks for that question. Now, if anyone else has questions, feel free to type them in the chat box or unmute yourself and dive in here. Just wanted to share one other thing. David shared the work he's been doing in the coal ash sector for those billions of tons of previously disposed ash out there that are increasingly being harvested, is the term of art that has been applied to the practice of going back and digging up previously disposed ash and using it, recycling it for some beneficial use. David showed the map of all the locations where that activity is already going. You know, since we're talking about it, just for everyone's information, there's a lot of activity underway, both in the executive branch and in Congress, looking at creating greater regulatory flexibility for coal ash harvesting for beneficial use. So both EPA is looking at potential revisions to its coal ash regulations, and also there's been a bill introduced in the U.S. House by Representative Andy Barr of Kentucky. Representative Barr is also a potential leading contender to be the person to replace Mitch McConnell in the Senate in the next election. Has taken an interest in this issue, and there may be legislation advancing to develop greater compliance flexibility for closure by removal for beneficial use. Give utilities and marketers longer periods of time to get that material out and put it to good use. So again, I think, you know, the volumes that we're talking about in this presentation, you know, additional coal production and transportation volumes on the front end of the power plant, and a substantially increased market for coal ash out the back end of the power plant, you know, could, you know, if these stars line up, produce some much higher numbers on both sides. So thank you for including that data, Dave.
Sure.
I don't think there was a question in there anywhere, but please feel free to comment. So
just one more comment on the rail transportation mapping to the plants. We work with GIS, and there's a good amount of rail network information in the GIS, and we're not talking about so many plants here. I think it would be what you were talking about earlier in terms of looking at networks and impacts for regulatory change. It would be very doable, combining the GIS with some of the other data.
That's good stuff. So Any other questions on the presentation? I am interested to get on to your small language model stuff, Dave. You know, we've our group has had several presentations on AI in our most recent meetings. We do have a kind of a special AI presentation coming up in Scottsdale next month, where we're going to be talking. You know, instead of just explaining what AI is, we have a speaker who's going to be giving some tangible, here's how to get started using AI in both in your personal life and in your professional life. So we're making that a major part of the program in October as well. But as in preparing for that, I only recently came across this whole concept of small language models. So, you know, the AI that gets all the headlines is these large language models. And that's what we hear about. So, but now I'm starting to hear about these small language modules. So you may be planning to explain the difference anyway, Dave, but I'll kick it over to you for that. And actually, now that concept is settled in, it seems to make even more sense for some of the business things that people might be able to benefit from. So let's talk AI for a minute.
Sure. So we've been being a research group. We try to make our lives easier in any way we can. We've been using AI a lot for a few years now, in addition to the other data science tools that we use. And one of the things we have struggled with from the beginning is just that it would make up things. And that, given the importance of having that chain of custody on data, it was a problem for us. And we've started to solve that by making these small environments to answer specific questions. And here's one that you could see, it's labeled as just IRP, Integrated Resource Plan AI. And when people talk about small language models, they're referring to a special training a data set based on a domain, usually a knowledge domain. And we've taken a bit of a shortcut to that, in that we're using the large language model, but we're limiting what it thinks about to a smaller data set. So in this case here, you can see this is just about IRPs. So we have the integrated resource plans in here for around 60 utilities. And we can ask questions in here that are pretty complex questions and get carefully documented answers. So here, just before this call, I asked, what are 3 examples of utility plans that changed substantially from the prior reporting period, focusing on those with 2025 updates? So that's my plain language question. And in about 3 minutes, I got this answer. So it mentioned Ameren with significant data center impacts, and OG&E, and PacifiCorp. And you'll note here that every fact that's mentioned is backed up by a reference. And this is how we avoid the problem of hallucination that we were getting before, just working in some of the large language models. Because we've set this up so that it's only looking at data for the topic of interest, which in this case is integrated resource plans. We're in the process of setting up a small model for every coal power plant in the US. We'll be actually done with, we're wrapping that up. It'll be done in a couple of weeks, because we've been working on that for over a year. So if you want to know all kinds of things about a specific plant, you can ask those questions in these small environments. And we're also publishing those to clients so that clients can add in a proprietary sandbox their own contracts and other documents and ask questions like, what clauses of our contract could be affected by changes that are happening at the plant. Now, these tools that are letting us work on smaller data sets, one question at a time, are giving us a tremendous amount of benefit now. So does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And the kind of the dual benefit of being able to reduce the hallucinations that come out of these large language models, and but then also being able to populate an AI in a secure way where you could put in some of your own business data that's now not being shared with the rest of the world. It's it's just within the confines of your own AI is seems to me to be very much more powerful. It showed up some of the reading I was doing about AI, and is AI going to kill us? One of the answers to those who say it's not is the fact that the AI environment is starting to diversify in this way. So there probably isn't going to be one dominant AI model out there. There's going to be a whole series of these smaller language models that are developed for discrete industries or discrete functions. And that was actually encouraging to me, and it's great to hear that folks like you are already doing it for our industry. You mentioned that was one other thing, I think, going back to some of the coal usage data you had too, pulling data from IRPs. Not every utility doesn't update their IRP every year, right? So, I mean, many of them are on 2-year, 3-year, or even 4-year cycles for their IRPs. So is that another thing that we should, another grain of salt we should take to say that, the initial swag of data, how much more coal we're going to be burning here in the next few years may be on the low end because there may be some changes that haven't showed up in IRPs yet?
Yeah, and certainly, because we're taking everything we could find in the public domain, press releases, regulatory filings, IRPs, and so on. There's obviously a lot of planning that's going on that is not in the public domain at all, and companies don't share what they don't need to share generally. So that's probably the biggest item, John, that causes these estimates to be low. Right? There's a lot afoot that we don't know about.
Yeah. Did I just see you run another query of your small language model there?
Yeah. So I wanted to have some things pre-run because it's kind of boring to wait for 2 minutes for it to come out, but I just said which IRPs mentioned data center impacts, and it gave me a report. And I don't know. I think probably everyone on this call could appreciate that if this question was given to an entry-level staff person, it would have taken a day or two to generate this report with all the references, and that's if it was a very good staff person. So we're just finding that we have the same number of people on our team, but they are able to get a lot more done than they were before we started using these tools.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. I feel older every day. I remember when we used to, write things down and sometimes mail them, and then fax machines came around and people were expected to respond in, a few days. And now we just got bored having to wait 2 minutes to spit out this report. So
Yeah,
starting feel like Ferris Bueller, life comes at you pretty quick, so.
Yeah. Yeah, I was working for Mobile Oil for a few years before I got my first email account. So
So, anyway, things are dynamic and moving quickly. Yeah, thanks for that demonstration. That's very, very interesting. And I assume these small language models, I mean, there's going to be a business for somebody just customizing small language models for individual companies, or I guess there probably already is one. I mean, are people out there doing that?
well, I mean, and just in a contract role, we're doing that for our clients now. You still have to aggregate all the data in order to have something to talk about, and we're doing that for all kinds of public and semi-public agencies. So you could look at, Port of Los Angeles and ask these same kind of questions based on meeting minutes, long-term plans, capital improvement plans, et cetera. A lot of our work now is just efficiently curating all that information so that you could ask questions in these smaller language environments. And just to say again, like different people have different definitions of what a small language model is. In our case, we define it as taking a small subset of all the information out there and focusing in on one topic at a time.
Interesting stuff. Throw it out there one last time if anybody else has questions for Dave. I think it's been a fascinating discussion. I think the takeaway is there's going to be a lot more coal on the rails. There's going to be a lot more coal ash on the rails, and the numbers that we talked about here today are probably conservative. So is any other questions from the group? All right. Well, not seeing any. David, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today and prepare all those materials. We will not be having an On Track Live in October. You can all get on an airplane and come see us in Scottsdale instead. So On Track Live will be off track in October. We will return in November for a discussion with Doug Green, who was a regulatory attorney in Washington, D.C. We're going to have a discussion about, kind of the Trump deregulatory agenda and what it's going to take in order for that to be durable. And then in December, our guest is going to be Llewellyn King, who's a very entertaining, very interesting guy who does a lot of work for the U.S. Energy Association. Also has a program called Capital Chronicles on PBS and has been around for a long time. We're going to be talking some about shifting energy politics and the things that are going on there. So that will be our December guest. So appreciate everybody coming out. Reminder that we do record these sessions and post them on the NCTA members only website for playback. So if you're ever not able to make it with us here, you can obviously go there and review the sessions at any time. So thank you everybody for coming out today. Thanks again, Dave, for pitching in. See everybody in Scottsdale.
Thank you.